In the headlines tonight, helping Africa get UN Security Council permanent seat said to be critical to voice African concerns. Scholars caution that the planned dialogue must be free of any interference by foreign powers. Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen called on Ethiopians in the diaspora to support peace and development efforts, besides resisting undue external pressure. The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister made the call during his meeting with members of the US-based Peace and Unity Task Force today in his office. Peace and Unity Task Force is a group that contributed a lot to coordinating and leading the #NoMo movement across North America. The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister recalled how some corners in the international community had colluded with destabilizers at the home front, threatening the peace and stability of the country. However, he said Ethiopians, people of Ethiopian origin, and friends of Ethiopia played pivotal roles in curbing such attempts and resisting undue external pressures gathered under the umbrella of the #NoMo movement. Scholars say that Africa must press ahead with its demand for a fair representation at the UN Security Council. The representation, according to the scholars, helps the continent to prioritize critical agendas and reflect more realistic stance at the global body. Kasaun Chani has more on this.
The United Nations Security Council still remains 5 permanent and 10 rotating seats. However, for a rising generation of African leaders, the idea of serving a 2-year term and rotating off does not square with their demand for fair and equal opportunities. Talking to BBC English, Zakaras Minota said the permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council helps Africa to restore inclusive growth and sustainable development.
Being membership in the US Council will have multiple effects, both in terms of diplomacy, politics, the economic development, the social development, tourism and trade. As you know, whenever something is decided upon you without your presence, costs you much. Okay? And this was the reality that we have been in history as a nation and as a country. So every economic activity, every major political issues, diplomatic issues, resource-related issues, technological aspects, tourism aspects are determined by the US Council, basically.
Over the past 6 decades, some Western states have controlled or parts of the world indirectly by institutionalizing the United Nations Security Council and ability to advance their national interest. According to the scholars, African leaders need to work aggressively to widen the inclusiveness of the United Nations Security Council. The African Union's request for permanent seats in the United Nations Security Council is critical to secure continental advantage in various fields.
The Security Council is one of the most powerful organs of the UN, where decisions are made regarding peace and security in the world. And as you know, peace and security are very key for prosperity and for sustainable development. When there is peace and security, there will be economic growth, and there will be social growth, and there will be stability. And that is why it's very important when decisions are being made at the UN Council, all the continents needs to be represented. And I think it's important, based on the negotiations and the discussions that are going on here.
The composition of the United Nations Security Council is autocratic and fails to reflect the current world at all. This is the very notion that needs to guide the reform process of the global body, say the scholars.
It is the right time to reform and revitalize the United Nations system to reflect current global realities and ensure that it is a more representative and equitable body. With our Esluini Consensus of 2005, we should collectively insist that Africa's reasonable request for no less than 2 permanent seats and 5 non-permanent seats in the UN Security Council be adopted.
Abdul Wahab, High Commissioner of the Republic of Senegal to India, reiterated Ethiopia's indispensable role for Pan-Africanism and the struggle for anti-colonialism, which placed the country as a symbol of freedom for black people all over the world. He also noted that the role AU plays in creating peaceful and harmonious continent that promotes closer integration among African states and subsequently improving intra-Africa trade and economic development. For her part, Ethiopian ambassador to India, Tituba Mulugeta, briefed the High Commissioner about the current developments in Ethiopia and the positive measures taken by the government to bring lasting peace in the country. She expressed her hope that the new chairperson of the AU would play a significant role in making Africa's voice be heard on the world stage and work vigorously for the realization of Agenda 2063. Scholars say Ethiopia should learn from other countries that have faced similar problems and overcome challenges in order to make the proposed national dialogue a success. They also cautioned that the planned dialogue must be free of any interference by foreign powers. Take a look.
Countries around the world like Rwanda have changed their tragic history through a comprehensive national dialogue in the wake of the worst atrocity. Preparations are now underway by the Ethiopian government to stage the much talked about comprehensive national dialogue. Scholars said Ethiopia should take lessons from other countries while staging the dialogue.
No less than 136 such dialogues have taken place around the world in a span of 40 years. Some 81 of these were successful, while the rest failed. Even though there are no hard and fast rules as to how national dialogue could be undertaken, there are some accepted approaches for inclusive national dialogue. The first of these says that those picked to take part in the process should be accepted by the community.
እነዚህ ነገሮች ቢካተቱ መልካም ናቸው ተብሎ በሁሉም ስምምነት የተደረሰባቸው ጉዳዮች አሉ። በቂ የሆነ የህዝብ ተሳትፎ ያስፈልጋል።
There should be educated public participation in the national dialogue. Alternatives of transitional justice should enhance public participation. Perpetrators should be brought before the Reconciliation Commission and atone to their wrongs. The process must also give space to victims to air their grievance.
የተበዳዮችም ተሳትፎ የማህበረሰቡም የሚዲያውም የሲቪል ሶሳይቲውም
Nations like South Africa, who have managed to conduct effective dialogue, have long turned their attention to other pressing issues like democracy and development.
ሳውዝ አፍሪካ ውስጥ ዛሬ አፓርታይድ ተፈጽሟል አልተፈጸመም የሚል ክርክር የለም።
Today, there is no debate whether apartheid happened in South Africa after a successful national dialogue. Same is true for the Germans regarding atrocities committed by the Nazis. I'm afraid there is not the case here in Ethiopia, where consensus lacks even on whether a massacre has taken place. This consensus helps find lasting solution to the ills facing the nation.
ደርግ ከስልጣን ሲወርድ ብዙ ሰው ለመክሰስ ሞክረናል። ከ3000 ሰው በላይ ተፈርዶበት ተከሷል። ኢትዮጵያ የተሻለች ሆናለች።
Scholars also urged political elites to adopt wider approaches and refrain from propagating polarized views. On the other hand, foreign intervention hinders the success of the national dialogue. The scholars warned that foreign intervention must be kept at bay.
የውጭ ጣልቃ ገብነት
የውጭ ጣልቃ ገብነት የተደረገባቸው አገሮች ፈርሰው
A number of nations crumbled in the face of foreign hands. Take the case of Libya, Syria, South Sudan and Somalia. The West will do everything it can to use these platforms to press ahead with its arm-twisting tactics.
አሁን በዚህ በመከከር መድረኩ አማካኝነት የሚመጣው ለውጥ የነሱ ታሪክ ያለበት ለማድረግ የነሱን ጥቅም የሚጠብቅ የነሱን የበላይነት የሚያንጸባርቅ አሸማጋይነት የሚያንጸባርቅ እንዲሆን ይፈልጋሉ።
The anticipated national dialogue should be inclusive, independent and transparent so that the nation finds lasting remedies to issues choking its growth.
You are watching ATV News. American Ethiopian Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, a leading advocacy group for the Ethiopian diaspora, has warned a new bill introduced by Representative Malinowski of New Jersey will adversely affect the century-old diplomatic relations between Ethiopia and the United States. The 14-month conflict between Ethiopia and the terrorist TPLF has started to ease following the counteroffensive by government forces which aborted the TPLF's advance towards the center and their occupation of Afar and Amhara. Following the TPLF's defeat and flee to Tigray, the Ethiopian government has taken significant steps towards peace, including halting armed operations at the border of Tigray, offering amnesty for several TPLF leaders, and creating a national dialogue to help secure lasting peace in the country. Despite that, Representative Malinowski has introduced a bill calling for aggressive action to be taken by the United States and other members of the international community. Among the irrational suggestions are additional sanctions, calls for a new human rights investigation, and seizing investment support for vital infrastructure projects in Ethiopia via the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. There is also a renewed effort to have the conflict defined as a genocide against the Tigray people, ignoring the millions in Amhara and Afar were victims of the TPLF's ethnic-based violence. Chairman of AIPAC, Mesfin Taganu, said he and his fellow association members are extremely disappointed and saddened to see the bill published by Representative Malinowski that is nothing short of an attack on Ethiopia and its people. The bill, he said, does not simply reflect the realities on the ground. Many of the actions it requests of Ethiopia, from an amnesty of prisoners to the formation of a national dialogue, are already in progress. Also, the bill has limited focus on the TPLF, the insurgent group who triggered the conflict, and yet the fully laid down arm and cease fighting. The AIPAC has repeatedly set out its request of Congress to support peace in Ethiopia. Ethiopians always will remember their heroine, Empress Tituba, the formidable wife of Emperor Menelik II, for her remarkable role in politics and society. Titu's suggestions and tactics, coupled with her bravery, have helped Ethiopians rout out the Italians 126 years back in the mountains of Adwa, up in the north. It was on February 11, 1918, that the Empress, otherwise known as Brahana's Ethiopia, drew her last breath. In the following piece, our staff reporter Daniel Kasaun looks into her life and contribution. Take a look.
Empress Tituba hails from Wollo, being born into a Christian and Muslim aristocratic family. Her name, Tituba, means sunshine, and she certainly acted like one, always providing both warmth and security to Ethiopians of her time. Tituba was a loyal and respectful wife to her husband, Meles II. According to royal historians, she was co-equal with the King Menelik, who always consulted her prior to making important decisions. Empress Tituba was the one who opposed the Italian machinations in the Treaty of Ujeli. Had it not been for the discovery, the treaty would have made Ethiopia an Italian protectorate. Armed with Tituba's wise advice and seeing the dangers, King Menelik tore up the treaty and fought the Italians at the Battle of Adwa along with Tituba, who commanded 5,000 infantry and 600 cavalry during the historic battle. She used her exceptional intelligence to strengthen and extend her powers through an adroit blend of patronage, political marriage, and leadership craft. Determined to resist imperialist designs on her country, she increasingly opposed any negotiations that would result in the loss of Ethiopian territory. When diplomacy gave way to war, she rode out at the head of her own army at her husband's side. When Menelik's health began to decline around 1906, Tituba began to make decisions on his behalf, angering her rivals in the process. This eventually provoked public agitation against her and forced her into retirement. She founded Addis Ababa, which remains Ethiopia's capital city today. In the final decades of her reign witnessed a period of modernization which gradually opened Ethiopia up to trade and greater technical expertise. History remembers Empress Tituba as the strategic empress. She died on this day, February 11, 1918, having been ousted from the National Palace. She lived out her last years at the Doto Mariam Church overlooking Addis Ababa. Tituba, the conservative politician, died at the age of 66.
They say, Kauleza mama, which simply means, hurry mama, please, please don't let them get you. Kauleza mama, Kauleza mama, Kauleza.
Africa's voice on the world stage needs to be heard loud and clear.
Kauleza mama, Kauleza mama, Kauleza mama, sheshi sabo.
I would like to propose to this august body the establishment of an African Union Continental Media House. This media house could be organized to provide authoritative news and information on our continent, fight disinformation, promote our collective agenda, and offer opportunities for Pan-African voice to be heard.